Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Graduate Dentist Podcast, your go-to guide through real-world dentistry and a community amongst grads. My name's Erica Huynh, and we are back today with another episode, today joined by Dr. Michael Frazis. Now, we all know that the learning curve when you first graduate is so steep, as you are thrown right into the deep end, into real-world dentistry, without someone looking over your shoulder and confirming your every clinical decision. It's scary, it's daunting, it's a lot of pressure, and how you learn to swim is entirely up to you. Your standards of good dentistry is up to you, and there's really no one holding you accountable for it. We very quickly learn to problem solve to get to the end result, but is our method of problem solving always the right way? How many steps could we potentially be missing, or are we compromising, or could we have done better? This is something that I myself have often wondered. Some things you learn to troubleshoot very quickly. Like, oh, that's what happens when I try restoring back-to-back class 2s with 2 matrices in at the same time. Or that's what happens when I put the forceps on too early. Or that's what happens when I under-reduce my occlusal reduction. But other things you won't realize until you've worked at that practice long enough to see your patients come back. Like those class 5 buccal restorations you thought you did well, but have now chipped and stained and debonded. Or your very first onlay that you thought you'd bonded on really well, only for it to pop off a year or two later. Or that restoration that your patient just always shreds floss on, that is full of voids you didn't even realize were there until you took a bite wing at their recall appointment 2 years later. I think a lot of us young dentists often question our clinical skills and our clinical competence. At the end of the day, we all want to do what's right and what's best for our patients. But when you're doing the same thing over and over and over and over again without anyone else telling you that you get a better outcome if you did it a different way, or you haven't done further training to learn how you could do it differently, then how do you know? I've come to realize that it's not that hard to be a decent dentist and to get a clinically acceptable outcome. And the reality is our patients probably don't even notice those minute details that we pull our hair out over. But do we not still owe it to them, owe it to ourselves and our profession to still pursue excellence? Perhaps it's a lot to ask and a pressure and a heavy weight that we put upon ourselves. But I do feel that a part of it is a necessary burden that we must carry as part of this profession. For those that follow me on Instagram, you will have probably seen me documenting my journey this year as I undertake the RipeGlobal Fellowship in Restorative Dentistry. I've done a lot of courses since I've graduated, but now going into my 3rd year, having done all the necessary trials and tribulations and stumbles as a new grad, I feel like it's time that I took on a more long-form course with accountability and progress tracking to really evaluate my clinical skills, learn my strengths and weaknesses, and fill in the gaps in knowledge that either I've always had but never given the time nor had the resources to fill in, or the gaps in my knowledge that I didn't even realize I didn't know. And from there, really learn to refine and to hone my skills and efficiency. And so in today's episode, it is an absolute pleasure to be joined by one of RipeGlobal's lead educators and mastermind behind a lot of the course content and curriculum, Dr. Michael Frazis. The theme of this episode is very much about trusting the process, resilience, and the importance of having a plan and sticking with it. It's very easy to get overwhelmed and derailed by the millions of decisions that we have to make day to day and in life. And this episode is all about grounding ourselves. From our mindset and our attitude towards CPD, our clinical goals, upskilling and patient communication, this episode is all about centering ourselves, being intentional, and taking things step by step. I absolutely love how Michael is always able to explain the thoughts and feelings that we all have, but have never known how to explain or have never consciously thought of, whether it's in terms of our mindset towards dentistry or a specific clinical scenario. It's always very much a big, oh my God, I feel the same way moment. And it's comforting and it's reassuring to hear. Michael is also running his course Mastering Everyday Dentistry next year, March 14th and 15th in Sydney, where he dives into all of these clinical scenarios we've talked about and how to manage and tackle them. Use the link in our show notes to get an exclusive 20% off for our graduate dentist community. And I look forward to seeing you all there as well. In the meantime, let's jump into today's episode with Michael. And Michael Frazis, welcome to the Graduate Dentist Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Erica.
I guess to dive into a big reason why I wanted to bring you on today and to continue our discussion was that I guess when I see you, I think we work, and perhaps why we get along well is that we work in very similar spaces,
Mhm.
and we try to be. I said I use the word that I see myself as a bridge between recent grads and more senior dentists in the dental community and the industry, and trying to help marry that and I guess help with that disconnect where what are the struggles that recent grads and students have and what value do senior dentists have to provide, but also sometimes I guess because they haven't been in those shoes for quite some time, they're forgotten.
Mm.
And you were just saying to me that you relate to that because once upon a time you were in that position where you also saw yourself as being that bridge. But now that you've become a senior dentist, I guess I am now your extension bridge.
I've
To
crossed over the bridge, and now passing the torch, as per se. But it's one of those things where you graduate as a dentist, and I don't know about you or anyone else listening, but you graduate with the expectation because you have that piece of paper that you've got up on your wall that I can do everything. I am licensed. I'm allowed to do anything and everything in the dental field. And then you start seeing patients and the cognitive disconnect of I'm allowed to do everything. Technically, I should be able to do everything. And then you have an open contact with your DO composite the first time you do it. Or if you're like me, where the first patient I see on the first day of private practice, I take out a super straightforward upper wisdom tooth. It's like a 1A, 2A, upper wisdom tooth. Everything's super easy, super straightforward. And then the patient faints in the waiting room when they're paying the bill and they hit their head on the counter. And it's like, what have I done? I have killed someone and it's my first day. I'm never going to be allowed to practice ever again. And like, that's how you start. And you're like, wow, like I'm allowed to do things, but I have no idea how to do anything. And then you have to sort of start putting things to putting pieces together and learning on your own and hope that the skills that you've learned at university will carry over to helping you learn more skills. But then like finding mentors and then talking to them, and it's difficult. And then like I managed to navigate that space, but I did it in a way like similar to what you're doing, where I did it openly and publicly because that's the only way I knew how to do it. Because I'm a, I mean, it doesn't sound like it because I'm on a podcast talking to you, but I'm a shy, more reserved person. I work
hey, me
better.
too.
I work better online. Like, I would
Hmm.
rather someone text me than
Hmm.
call me. Like, if you're calling me, I'm like, I'm just going to let that go to voicemail and then I'll message them and say, like, hey,
Sorry, I was busy.
busy, can't talk right now, please text. And I'm like, just in my pajamas, like in bed. I'm like, just message me. I would rather send you a text than call you.
Hmm.
And so, because of the internet being like a thing, I would send people messages saying, like, hey, I'm struggling with this thing. Here's a photo. How do I fix it? And this was like the beginning of that wave in Australia. Like, it was a big thing, like the online dental forums and stuff in America and the UK, but it had just started coming into Australia when I graduated. Like Lincoln brought it over. We didn't bring it over; it was already kind of establishing. But he was in like the first wave, like the dental
Pioneering it.
towns in
Yeah.
America, like that big wave from like the big names. And then when it carried over here, he wanted to like recreate those kind of feelings and things here. And then I was like, oh, that looks cool. I can work with that. I can send a photo to someone. I can do this. And then like I was learning things and then posting cases and asking people questions like online. And then people were like, oh wow, I'm learning a lot by you asking the question. I was like, I am now a bridge between like these other people. Because for some reason, like everyone has equal access to these mentors that, you and me know. And it's not
Mm.
like you can't send like Didier Diche a message on Instagram. It's not like you can't, like I've sent messages to all the big names, but they don't always reply to you because they're busy, or they just don't know you, or like they get 1,000 people messaging them throughout the day. And it happens to me as well. Like you can't respond to everyone, like you have your own private life. But if you're like a person that they know personally, then they might respond to you, and then you can then answer that question for everyone else who can't get to talk to them. And so you become that bridge. And as I've gotten older and learnt more things and am no longer a recent grad, I mean, I think recent grad is less than 5 years and I'm over a decade,
Hmm.
you start to become on the other side of the bridge. And now I'm the person that people come to and ask for questions, or the
Mm.
people that you get 1,000 messages in a day saying, how do I do this? And I'm like, I can't answer all those questions. There's far too many questions. And so you build systems, you go on
Hmm.
podcasts, you do all these kind of things so that you can answer the majority of the questions for the majority of the people.
Yeah, that's really wonderful, Michael. And I'm so glad I get to talk to you about this. Also, I guess perhaps it comes at a really excellent time
Hmm.
because I think I go through ups and downs with my level of interaction
Hmm.
on social media. And I think when the graduate dentist first started, it all first came about because I was pushing myself to be like, you know what, start sharing cases, and very much that same mindset. The more you put yourself out there, you're so stuck in your own little bubble with how things are, right? But then when you start just like sharing and reaching out, you open yourself up to just this world of so much more wealth and knowledge and
Hmm.
information. And so that's what I guess started the graduate dentist. But then I think we all go through ups and downs in terms of our level of confidence. And then it can be really daunting to post on social media,
Yeah.
particularly nowadays when there's so much noise and all you see is everyone's beautiful work and the before and the afters. And I think we can be also highly critical of ourselves where you take a photo of something and you look at it, you're like, but this wasn't right and that wasn't right. You made mention of something right at the beginning that I thought of when the other day I was doing a restoration distal of a 3-7, no, distal of a 4-7, and I couldn't see it directly, so I was doing it all entirely indirect. I was just chatting with my DA and chatting with my patient about it and just appreciating that I'd gotten to a point where I could prep this all entirely indirect. And I was saying to them, at one point when we first learnt dentistry, it was so frustrating because when our tutors told us to do indirect and practice indirect vision on our mannequin models, you'd look in the mirror and you want your hand to go one way and it goes the other way. And you want it to go
Yeah.
up and it goes down. But I guess it was just taking the time to appreciate, like, oh, I've gotten to a point where my hand goes the way that I want it to.
Yep.
But it's like that when you were saying you want to do a filling, you know how to do a filling, but then you do it and you're like, oh, there's an open contact.
Yeah.
Or something like that. So there's that disconnect as a new grad or at whatever stage of your career where you want to do something, but you can't quite do it yet. And you get highly critical of yourself because, like, why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? And I think I felt that as well. And so I was hesitant to share. But then in the recent like weeks, I said, you know what? I need to lead by example. And we
Yeah.
run this platform and we run this community where I encourage people to put themselves out there to get feedback. I need to kind of set an example to do that myself. So I'm going to post cases that aren't pretty and I'm
Good.
going to post the things that aren't great, and just get people's feedback. And the community is so wonderful. And I guess through my reflections and through people chiming in and giving their thoughts, it's exactly like what you said that you did, where I then share that and people are like, oh my God, I'm so glad you got that answer from so and so, or I'm so glad you asked that. And I think it's really wonderful. And I'm really grateful that we've been able to build that.
No, it happens to everyone. And like to come back to the what you said about, you realize that you've been doing, fillings for so long that you can now do it like basically with your eyes closed. Like it becomes subconscious. Like you can do it while talking to your DA, or like other things happen. Like you start to listen to the music, or you care what music is on because you're like, oh, actually, like I like this song. Like I'm getting in the zone. I'm doing this. Whereas like rewind like 6 months ago, or a year ago, or 2 years ago, you're like everything needs to be exact, like it needs to be the right patient for the right thing. And it's like, I need dead silence, I need this, everything has to be like exactly right. And then still goes wrong. And you're like, I have no control over everything. But the other part of that equation is as you get more experience, because you do more things, like you don't get experience by reading something in a textbook and going, oh, that's how you do a filling. You get some information about that, some knowledge. But until you do a filling, fail, do a filling, fail, and then you keep doing that often enough, and then you've realized what you do leads to what end result, and you keep doing that and you change the thing until you get a good result, and then that's how you get experience. Like the old saying, like, how do you get good at something? You know, you do multiple repetitions. But basically, like, you can't get experienced at something without making mistakes. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to have those repetitions in a safe environment. And that's why when we learn at university, you start with working on the mannequin, working on models. Like, you start indirect vision, exercises like drill 1 millimeter deep into this like lump of plastic. And you're like, 1 millimeter, that doesn't sound very deep. And then they ask
Mm-hmm.
you to do like 2 millimeters, and like, wow, that is so deep. It's like you feel like you're going forever. And then you measure it and you're like 0.5, and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
there's a bit of a disconnect there. But the thing that happens after you do multiple repetitions is you start to realize that you yourself aren't bad at dentistry. It's just sometimes either your patient's anatomy or the choices that the patient has made or the choices you have made have led to a specific outcome. So I still get open contact sometimes. So I'll do a filling and I'll get an open contact. But the difference is, because I've done enough fillings, I know that open contacts aren't the normal. It's
Mm.
something has gone wrong. And I go, what of the things that I have done has gone wrong? And I'm like, I normally use this matrix band, but I decided to use this matrix band because I was trying to achieve this other thing. And now I got this result. So I need to go back, take this out, and redo it the way that I normally do it because that's predictable. But if you don't
Mm-hmm.
have enough repetitions under your belt, you either
Yeah.
go, all of my fillings have open contacts, therefore I'm shit,
Mm-hmm.
or you don't know what you did that caused that outcome because you haven't done enough of them to know cause and effect.
100%. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that, and I kind of want to dive into, I guess, CPD and how
Hmm.
we upskill and learn. But one of the things that I've found is that you can go to all this CPD, but none of that will ever replace just having to do it and being
Yeah.
able to directly associate that cause and effect. There's a lot that comes with leaving university and properly adulting that no one really prepares you for. As a new grad with an income and newfound responsibilities we don't know what to do with, managing finances can be really tough. That's where JS Medical and Dental Finance comes in. Specializing in financing options tailored to medical and dental professionals, JSMDF is a completely independent broker dedicated to finding the best bank and lender for your unique situation. Led by the incredible Jason Savage, who personally came to my rescue and worked his magic and helped me secure a loan before I even started working, JSMDF is committed to supporting you throughout your personal and professional journey in whatever way you need. Whether you're looking to buy a house, a car, a practice, or pay off that year-long CPD course you signed yourself up for, JSMDF offer comprehensive advice tailored to your short and long-term plans. Their goal is to be with you from day one and thoroughly understand your financial needs and provide solutions that best work for you. And so if you're looking for some advice or you simply want to explore your options, get in touch with Jason and his team. A big thank you to JSMDF for helping make being an adult that extra bit easier and for supporting the graduate dentist community. And I think a good reminder and example, this just happened 2 days ago, but I was helping one of our new grads do her very first online prep. And the next day, the temp fell off. And one of our other dentists, he saw the patient and he just sent us a message and he giggled about it. And he's just like, we're like, welcome to the loyalty system and welcome to Dr. Ping's loyalty system where he recements your temp crowns. And we're just joking about it. And we were saying to my new grad that when I first started, this senior dentist had to recement so many of my temps. It didn't matter how many times I asked people, whatever course you learn, it's just, what was it that I wasn't doing? And it could be something really little, right? But what wasn't I doing that didn't get it to stay? And then he just said, Erica, I don't think I've recemented one for you in over a year.
Yeah.
So he says, I recemented them for you when you were going through that trial and error period to find out how you could do it correctly. But clearly something clicked and now you know, right? And so I guess much like when we're talking to my new grad is we can give you all the tips and tricks, but you kind of have to just do them enough yourself to then
Yeah.
realize, why did they keep falling off? Right?
Yeah. And
Mm.
it's the thing, like like I help
Mm,
like a lot of new grads in our practice the same sort of way,
mm,
and they'll have a specific issue, and then they have the issue, and then you reflect on your own practice, and you're like, I haven't had this issue for a really long time, and I'm going,
mm-hmm,
what did I do to solve it? And like you don't realize what you did because you don't realize you've gotten out of that phase and into that
mm,
next phase. You're out of that trial and error phase and into the, okay, you do that last thing, it works, and like, okay, I'm going to do that again. It worked again.
mm,
It keeps working, and then you forget to like reevaluate and go, okay, this is working. This is not no longer trial and error phase.
mm,
This works. Therefore, I'm doing it forevermore. Like you
mm,
forget to like take a step back and review where you were and where you're getting to, and that's why photos are really good and courses are
mm-hmm,
really good where they're like the long format courses where you get to review things, or the
mm-hmm,
same person gets to review your work, or you get to review your work over multiple sort of sessions. Because if you go to lots of different courses, you have lots of different people seeing you at different points in your life and your career, and so you might have someone help you with let's say onlay preps and doing the prep because that was your issue. They don't really care about your temporaries because you can't even prep an onlay. And so you're so
mm-hmm,
hyper focused on getting the onlays correct that after you're like, yay, that's all done. And then now your temps keep falling off. And then you go
mm-hmm,
back to another onlay course and then someone sees, oh, they've got good onlay preps, but their temps are falling off. Okay, let's work on the temp side of things. And so sometimes you have to do the same course or the same types of courses multiple times because you're not doing like a long format course, or you don't have the same person going, okay, now that you've learned this bit, let's work on this bit. You have different people. And
mm-hmm,
unless you are the person in charge of your, like the plan of your CPD kind of thing, you kind of either have
mm-hmm,
to do long format courses or piece together other courses to create your own mini long format course. Then you get a disconnect of like, I'm really bad at onlays. I've learned this bit, but now
mm,
I can't get the temps right. Therefore,
mm-hmm,
I'm really bad at onlays. But you don't realize that
mm-hmm.
you've solved one problem but forgotten to
Yeah.
solve the other one.
You just open one door and then there's another locked door and then you have to
Yeah,
open that one, right? It's just hitting these hurdles. But as you said, it's just like you get to a point where you've opened all those doors
yeah,
and it's just you're on that mastery phase, right?
correct. As dentists, the work that we do is very complicated. It's very complex, and I think we don't realize that it's actually a very difficult profession to do mentally, physically. It's very taxing, but it's also mentally draining. There's like 1,000 different things that we're trying to control all at the same time. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I like rubber dam is because you remove some variables so that you don't have to worry about the patient. You just focus on the dentistry side of things. But we get really good at doing something and then we move on to the next difficult thing. And so the stress stays constant, but it shifts from what's stressing you. From like at the beginning, it's like, I don't know how to talk to patients. Like it doesn't even matter that you can't do the dentistry because you can't even talk to someone. You can't tell them they have a cavity because you're so shy. And then you fix that. And then the next thing that stresses you is like, okay, they're in the chair, but I don't know how to do LA properly without causing them pain. And so they're not coming back. And then you solve that. And then you have the next stress. So you solve a stress and you introduce a new one. Like you said, you open a door, fix it, close it, move on. There's always another door. And so the hard things that you do in dentistry and in life, they change as you grow and develop. And so unless you take that step back and go, I've actually come such a long way from, 6 months ago, or even 6 weeks ago, or even 6 years ago, that like I'm not stressed about the same things. But we get caught up on I'm stressed. It's like, yeah, but the things that stress you now are more complicated than they were before. And unless you reflect, you stay in that I'm stressed, and then you don't get the reward system of like, I have beaten this challenge, I have leveled up. And then you stay in that sort of stressed moment, just focusing on the stress, and then you get burnt out and you don't grow and you don't develop. And it happens to me, like you said, where you don't post cases because you get in your own head, this isn't good enough. But then you post the case and everyone's like, this is amazing. And you're like, really? It feels like my worst work, but it's actually better than what you did 6 months ago. but you don't see it because like the next case, you're like, oh, this is slightly better. This is slightly better. Oh, this one's better. Like, I don't know if it's happened to you. Like, I've done cases where I'm like, I'm going to post this case online. This is going to be my swan song. It's going to get like 1,000 likes. It's going to be like organic likes. It's going to break the internet. I'm going to go viral off this like prep. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
And then like you're nailing like every photo. Everything's dry. Everything's beautiful. And then you do the insert and like it's just looks weird on the photo, or just something's wrong, or like the shade of the crown is just slightly too light or dark, and you're like, I have ruined it. This is
Yeah.
not going to be my swan. I'm not going to retire off the monetary income of the ad revenue from this post about my prep. And then you don't post it. And it happens to me so often. And the thing is, I look at it now, 6 months later, and I'm like, that's actually a really good post. I should post that up, because I'm not in that moment of like, hey, this is really crap because I don't really like what happened. I forget the reason why I didn't like it. And I look back when I review the patient, I'm like, oh, I never posted this case. I should post it now. It's a pretty good case. Like, you get caught up
Yeah.
in them. It like happens to all of us. So if anyone's listening and they don't want to post this case because they think it's not good enough, it happens to me as well. But like, what's good enough changes per person and per year and day and everything.
I often say on the podcast that the more I do, the more I realize just how little I know, and how dentistry is just one of those careers where you never stop learning. But let's be real, getting the right training can be expensive, time consuming, and sometimes just straight up overwhelming. That's where RipeGlobal comes in. Founded by Dr. Lincoln Harris, RipeGlobal is completely changing the way that we learn. They offer immersive, hands-on training that actually fits into your life. Whether it's through improving your preps, getting faster with composites, or tackling more complex cases, you'll be learning from some of the best clinicians in the world without having to take time off work or spend thousands on travel. And so if you're serious about upskilling and boosting your confidence in the clinic, check out RipeGlobal today. Hit the link in our show notes and let's start learning smarter, not harder. You're so correct though when you talk about that emotional part of it that influences it, and you look at it and at that point in time you're like, this is the worst thing ever. And then you just give yourself a week and you look back and you're like, it's actually, yes, it's not perfect, but it's not as bad as I thought it
Yeah.
would be. But I had that happen just the other day where I said I was doing this deep restoration and I was really happy with my caries removal. I was happy with my rubber dam. I was happy with my matrix. Everything was going really well. And then I built it up and I was running late and looked at it, I'm like, well, now it looks like a potato.
Yeah.
And as I was posting it, I was like to people like, did you expect it to look like a masterpiece? I'm like, it's not. But you know what? I'm going to commit to it because you have to stick with like, this was the intention of it. And if I feel, and I had a student that reached out to me that said, oh, I'm so grateful for like the transparency and the vulnerability when it's not always a slam dunk perfect, textbook perfect every time, because that's the reality of dentistry. I think the difference between, and this is not to say that like, oh, we, you know, if work is subpar and suboptimal, that we just accept it. But I think we can be really critical of like little imperfections where it's still clinically acceptable.
Yeah.
It's just not 100% perfect, but that's the reality of dentistry. And I was saying to the student, like, what disservice are we doing to one another where we all just see each other's highlights, and so we put everyone else up on pedestals, and then we bring ourselves down because we see the 10 photos that were really good and then the last one that didn't look good, and then we think we're
Yeah.
or the work we do is terrible, right? Let's talk about when you were a grad then, and you talked about your journey of wanting to upskill and how you reached out to educators and everything. But I kind of want to understand how it was like for you when you were going through that period. And now reflecting back a decade later, what do you think were things that you did well and things that you wish, like if you were to give yourself advice, you'd say, you know, maybe not so, like courses that you did that you thought were like game changers, and things that you invested in that you're like, in hindsight, I did that too early, or that wasn't right for me, or that wasn't appropriate.
So in the moment, like I struggled with this, but reflecting back, it was the best thing I did. So when I graduated, I wanted to, like I got into dentistry like most people, you want to get your hands wet, you want to do surgery, you want to make things pretty, like all those kind of like big picture, Instagram kind of dentistry stuff. And so when I graduated, I had this big idea of like, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to rebuild people's lives through their teeth. But I didn't know how to do it. And so like when I reached out to people, I have no idea who this person was that told me. It might have been Lincoln. It might have been some random message on like DPR or something where I told them that I wanted to do implants. I wanted to learn how to do implants. And they told me, in order to get good at doing implants, you first must be good at doing restorative work. You can't just learn to put the implant in and then expect that everything's going to be fine. You need to know how to do like restorative dentistry and then go and learn implants. And so I just structured all my, CPD around that. So I was like, I had this plan, I'd written it down in like this Word document, Excel spreadsheet, something where I'm going to first learn how to do composites and then learn how to do crowns and then learn how to do this and then do communication course. And like I had a plan of what I was going to do. The problem was while I was in that plan and at the end, like learn like full mouth rehabs and then learn how to do implants. While I was in that plan in the first like year, I was like, this is really slow. I'm not getting anywhere. Like I want to learn how to do implants and I'm like learning about composite and it's not working. So like, why can't I just go and do implants? And then I signed up for like Lincoln's full mouth rehab course in like my second year out. And then I did it and he was like, your hand skills, not good. Very bad. He's like, you were the worst hand skills I've ever seen in my career of like teaching people up until that point. And I was like, okay, how do we fix that? It was like, just come back to like help me with some courses and like, the friendship and professional development grew from there. But like I did that course so early because I wanted to like jumpstart everything. And I had to go backwards. Like I learned how to do composites, then full mouth rehabs, learned I was really bad at doing it because I had none of the actual skills of doing a full mouth rehab, because most of the skills of doing a rehab is like treatment planning, communication, how to do a crown prep and not die after one crown prep so that you can survive and do the next like 14 crown preps. Like those kind of skills happen with time, experience. Like if you don't know how to prep one, how are you going to prep 14? Like it's really hard to like make the leap in your head. And so I thought it was so slow. And then everyone else I was comparing myself to, like I was comparing my journey, which was slow to me, to other people because they just jumped in and did implants. But then looking back 10 years later, they're now starting to try to learn how to do the restorative side of things, which I already had learned. And so I was in my little journey seeing that, okay, I've got this plan, I'm doing it, it's too slow, seeing other people achieve what I wanted to achieve earlier, but I didn't realize that they had a different start to me. They had ticked a few boxes of my plan already before they had even started because they had more experience, they had, more mature students, they'd worked in dental before, or they just didn't have the same life goals as me. And so they didn't care or need that other level of experience, or they weren't, as introverted as I was, and they didn't have to learn all the communication skills that I had to learn because they were born with them. And so everyone's pathway was going to be different. But I was comparing myself to people who weren't on my journey. But looking back, that's probably what stopped me kind of enjoying the journey as much as I, should have. But in answer to your question of what courses did I do that I like were really good, and what courses did I do that were probably a bit early, I focused really heavily on the communication courses really early, which was to my benefit and detriment. There were a lot of tutors at uni that said that I was overconfident in my abilities to sort of sell dentistry, which can be a little bit dangerous. And so to then graduate and then start learning more about the things that you were comfortable learning, which was communication, meant that I became even better at selling treatment that I wasn't capable of doing. And so you kind of have to be careful of just leaning into the education that you feel comfortable learning. So it's like if you're really good at crown preps, going to a crown prep course so that someone can tell you, hey, you're really good at crown preps doesn't teach you anything. And so I was kind of doing that with communication courses because I'd done so many of them and I got good at communication. I just kept doing them because I was quote unquote good at doing them. And that was to my detriment. The other thing was like when I jumped and did like a more complex course from the beginning, I kind of like had that jarring moment, but it could have also broken me. Like I'm lucky that, it was Lincoln and, he held my hand through things afterwards. He was kind of a mentor before that, but because I paid him a large sum of money, he also became a mentor after that. And so I also helped him like at courses. That's how I did like could afford to do all the courses that I did. Basically, he was like, hey, I'm bringing Pasquale Venuti down to do a hands-on course. I need someone to help like run it. Do you want to come? And I'm like, do I have to pay? He's like, no, you can come to the lecture for free, but you have to work. And I'm like, I'm there. I'm there. I'll work for free. Like I literally exchanged my work services. Like I paid for my flights, my accommodation. Like he took me out to dinners and stuff, but flights and accommodation for nearly like 8 years. Like I paid my way to these things to help to learn because I didn't have any money. I was like a new grad. I didn't come from money. My parents didn't have money. I was not very good at saving. I spent money on things that I shouldn't have spent money on. And so I had to figure out other ways of getting the knowledge. And that was just one of the ways that I found. But the hyper focus on things that I was good at was probably a detriment because I was just getting positive feedback on things that I was already good at, rather than negative feedback on, hey, you're not very good at this. This is how you improve. But then I made a big jump and just went to the other extreme of like I did something that I really wanted to do, but I wasn't ready to do it. I'm lucky it didn't break me because I see it break so many people because it happens in so many courses where they go in and they go, this is really hard. And then they just never try ever again because they're doing too many big jumps on the ladder to get to their end goal. So they go, this is taking too long. I'm just going to do a big jump. And then they fall. And then instead of just getting back to where they were before, they just don't try. And that could have happened with me. So anyone who's like listening and going, hey, I'm just going to do exactly what Michael did, it may not work because it could have also not worked for me. There's nothing special about me that made me suddenly become the person overnight. Like it took 10 years and the wind could have changed. Like Lincoln could have been in a bad mood and said the wrong thing to me one evening. And then I was like, that guy's a dick. I'm not going to go to any more of his courses. And then
Yeah.
nothing would have happened. Like
Yeah.
you don't know what's going to happen in your life. So if you have a plan to do it slowly, do it slowly, but don't complain that it's also happening slowly when you're the one who's making it happen slowly for a reason.
Yeah. Well, actually, Michael, we had this exact discussion, albeit very briefly. But when we were talking about I myself
Mhm.
doing the restorative in the fellowship in restorative dentistry,
Yeah, yeah, with
but
RipeGlobal. Yeah.
with RipeGlobal, where I had said to you that previously, because I think I was tossing up the idea of whether to do it last year in my
Yeah.
second year or not, and I had said to you, oh, I wasn't ready, and you
Mm.
said, well, what do you mean you're not ready? And you're like, I don't understand when people say they're not ready because this course is to help you be ready. And I
Mm.
said, and I think this is perhaps that moment where we realize that everyone has their own journey and everyone is ready at a different point.
Mm.
And I said, I myself felt that, just as you said, life circumstances, the other things that you're trying to juggle. I was trying to launch the podcast. I was getting settled in a new city, um, developing a new support network around me. There was just so much. And I've always considered myself a slow learner. I'm someone who's just takes their time. I don't pick things up straight away. I try hard. I think that sometimes frustrates me because like I'm really trying. I'm really trying, but I'm just not got it yet. But because of all of that, I think I kind of realized in my first year I did a lot of CPD, but I also realized that a lot of it probably wasn't useful for me because I needed to actually just get the reps in. And this may just be a personal thing, but this was what I found worked for me was that it didn't matter how many times I did a course on endo, I wouldn't know how to do an endo until I actually started doing endos.
Correct.
Right? And so I felt like I needed to do that. And you realize, oh, it's not that I'm bad at endo and I need to do more courses. I just actually need to do more endo. And then you realize that a lot of those things that you struggle with kind of just even out. And that's full circle to what we said at the very
Yeah.
beginning of just you just trial and error and you realize, oh, this is why I couldn't take a radiograph. I don't necessarily need to go to a course for someone to answer that.
Yeah.
I just need to try it a few more times until I realize that's how I position it to take a radiograph, right? But I think I had to do that. And in my second year, a lot of it was just refinement. It was realizing, okay, these are the areas that I am uh, have gotten better at, but these are the areas that I'm still struggling or the gaps in my knowledge that I really do need some further assistance. And that's why now being in my third year, I said, now I feel like is a more appropriate time for me
Yeah.
to do a more long form course because I have a good baseline understanding of things. And now I feel like if I go into a course, it's actually going to fill in the gaps. Whereas previously there was no scaffolding at all. And so I'd just be dumped with all this information and not even know how to piece it all together. But I think
100%.
that's different for everyone, right?
Exactly. And
Mm,
like
mm,
like you were saying and like I was saying as well, like everyone's
mm,
got, different stages that there are in life. And even though you might graduate at the same time as someone, you don't know their journey before they got to that point, their mental capacity, their stress levels, their ability to juggle multiple things at the same time. Like you said, you probably could have done the course earlier, but you had so many other things that you were juggling that you didn't have the capacity, even mentally, to go, I can devote time and energy to this. You were, moving cities, launching podcasts, businesses, like doing so many other things that you didn't have time to devote to the fact that you were like, hey, I need to learn how to learn. And then once you learned how to learn, how you yourself learn, then you're like, oh, actually, now I'm ready to do it. It had nothing to do with dentistry. But people come to me and they go, I want to learn how to do a full mouth rehab. Then I'm going to come and join the fellowship so that you can teach me how to do a full mouth rehab. Like they want to learn the skills on their own so that they're ready to show off when they come to the course. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense because you're at the course to learn how to do those skills. You're not there to impress the educator. This isn't like university where you get a little gold star and the tutor leaves you alone and then you feel all warm and happy. Like this is to better you and your patients. Like the outcome matters. And so if you're learning it your own way, that's fine. You can do that. But don't do that and then come to the course trying to show off what you learned because then you go in with like an arrogance or like, I'm better than this course because I learned all those things at other courses. And we get people like that like a lot. Or you have the complete opposite where they come in and they expect you to spoon feed them how to learn, how to do everything. And when something doesn't magically, organically happen, like it happened at university, where you have someone going, hey, this is what we're doing. I'm going to hold your hand, like all these kind of things. They go, I'm not getting a result. It's like, but you haven't done anything to get a result. Like, I've watched the lecture, but I'm not doing endo. It's like, but you haven't even booked in a patient to do endo. Like, the biggest one that happen, and it happens far more frequently than you think, is obviously the first thing that we focus on is photography in the course because it's so fundamental to getting the photos, treatment planning, communicating with colleagues, with labs, with all those kind of things. And so like a couple of months will pass and then someone will go, look, this course just, bless you, just isn't for me. And I'm like, okay, what's happening? It's like, look, I just really can't get a hang of the photos. It's just not working for me. It's just, we're like, okay, look, let's just do a one-on-one. Let's see what's happening with your photos, your skills. And I'm like, okay, what camera do you have? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, oh, well, I bought a camera, but I can't remember what I bought. I'm like, okay, can you take a photo of your camera? And they're like, oh, I can't because it's in the box. And I'm like, okay, so you're having an issue with taking a photo, but the camera still lives in a box that's sealed and you haven't opened the box. Like you're worried about step 7, but you haven't even done step 0 of open box. Like they bought a camera and then they go, now I will do dentistry to a high level. It's like, yeah, but you got to like open the box and like use the camera and then like there's a lot of other steps that need to happen. And so some people come into the course amazing at photos. They've already done photography from other courses or from their, you know, other parts in life. And so they hit the ground running and then people see them taking photos and they're like, there must be something wrong with me. It's like, no, but they started taking photos like 5 years before you even bought a camera. So they're way past you in the steps. So you just need to start back where they were. You can't compare your journey to someone else's at that specific moment in time. And you can't get to anything without doing things. Like you can't learn how to do endodontics without picking up a file and doing endodontics. You can't learn how to take photos unless you actually open the box, put the lens on the camera, and take a photo. And it comes back to what you were saying before, like you just have to do that trial and error in a safe environment. And that's why we built the, RipeGlobal Fellowship the way that we have, and why you go to all these courses is so that you can do the simulations, you can do the repetition on a mannequin, you can make those mistakes, you know what it result happens when you use a certain type of matrix. What happens when you use a wedge that is too small or too big? What happens to your overhang? What happens to the contact point? What happens if you use a molar band, on, like a molar sectional band on a premolar? What happens when you use one that's already crinkled and ruffled up? Like what happens when you reuse one? Like all those things you don't know unless you do it. But you don't want to do it on a patient because then you're super stressed because it matters.
Oh my goodness. I feel like you just going through all of that just gave me so much PTSD from our last simulation training. Do you know, I think of the simulation trainings we've done of this fellowship, the direct restorative one has stressed me out the most.
Why is that?
Because it was exactly like what you said. And I think it was, and what was really funny was when I did the fail fast assessments, when it was just no time pressure, just doing it on my own. I was in clinic. I did half of them on a weekend and the other half during some downtime
Mm-hmm.
when we didn't have patients. And one of the other dentists came in and was just having a look at what I was doing. And I was just like, I hate this. And he's just like, why? They don't look bad. And I'm like, no, because this contact is too high and this contact's too narrow and there's an overhang here and this marginal ridge isn't rounded and blah, 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 blah. And he's just like, I think you're being a bit critical of yourself. But I said that I found the exercise frustrating, but also in a good way because it was like this opportunity to really look at the consequence. It's like the whole cause and effect, right? These are the consequences when I use a wedge that doesn't fit, or these are the consequences of when I don't have a good seal. And I was seeing that all in, as you said, like a simulated safe environment. And it frustrated me because I was realizing all these, I guess, like I won't say imperfections, but yeah, like things that were less than ideal that previously you wouldn't have fixated on because you're stressed and you're on a patient and you just want to get them in and out. And it makes you think of like, how many overhangs have I got? And how many voids in restorations and how many, sharp edges that are getting cut on floss are out there in the world on patients that I've previously treated. But in that environment, you don't have the opportunity to nitpick. But in this simulation, there was this opportunity to really nitpick and assess and do that cause and effect of this is what happens when I do this and this is what happens when I don't do that. I think if you truly want to upskill, you need that frustration because there's no, as you said, there's no point doing a course on something that you're already good at because then why do a course on it? If anything, that level of discomfort and frustration you have because you're not good at it is a good thing. But I think that the important factor from that is that resilience
to be like, I'm not good at it, but this is why I'm here, and I'm going to learn how to improve this, as opposed to giving up, which is very easy to just give up and
Yes.
be like, no, I'm just going to pretend that didn't happen.
And it's one of the things that you said was obviously it felt different doing like the exercise without someone looking over your shoulder versus someone looking over your shoulder. And the reason why it's designed that way, to have someone look over your shoulder and have the time pressure of you have a certain amount of work that you need to do in a certain amount of time. We don't have like lunch breaks or a morning tea break in our hands-on, because when you're at work you don't have a morning tea break. You don't do like 5 minutes of like a filling where you're holding the patient's head inside out to your eyes and you're just sort of doing a little bit of drilling, and then you kind of like stare at it for like 45 minutes, and then you go and have a coffee, and then you come back, and then you finish doing the prep, and then you have another coffee, and then you place the composite, and then you have like a lunch break, and like it draws it out far too long. And like you said, you become hypercritical when you do it on your own, but it's completely different level of stress when the patient's in the chair, you have the next patient in the waiting room, and like you were talking about before, you have this big plan of making it look super amazing and super beautiful, and then it looks like a potato, and you're like, why does it look like a potato? And you don't care, so then you just throw them out into the waiting room and you get another patient. But if you stop and reflect, because someone's like, take a photo, let's have a look, what choices did you make that got you to it looking like a potato? Okay, because you did this, this then happened. Because you don't have the repetitions behind you, you don't know the cause and effect. So having an educator go, hey, you did this, then this happened, which led to this, which led to this, which led to your end result, helps you to go, okay, if I don't do that first thing, my end result is better. But that's like 5 steps ago. And if you don't have the photo evidence, you can't track that. And when you go to a course that's in a hotel, or even that's at the ADA, you don't have that unless you literally have the educator watching you the whole time. And they don't, because there's one of you and they have like 22 people, and you don't like have the evidence. Like if you took, and if anyone goes to any hands-on courses, if you take a photo of every step that you do at a hands-on course, regardless if it's a RipeGlobal one or not, and then catalog the work and then show them to the instructor, you will get a much better outcome than if you had just do a prep and then a finish and then go, this is my composite. And they go, well, that looks crap. And you're like, well, I don't know why. And they're like, well, I don't know either. So what am I going to do? You just go there and they tell you, you're bad. And you're like, I knew that. That's why I came to the course and I can't help it. And you watch someone do something and you're like, okay, that's great that you can do it on your screen above there. But if I could watch you do that and then be able to do it myself, I wouldn't be at this course in the first place, because I would have already seen you do it and then have done it. And so sometimes like the way that we teach people needs to change, because it's just not working. And that's why we do the simulation side of things that we do. But the other part of it, which you kind of touched on, is what happens when you use certain materials and instruments and things like that. When you go to a course that's somewhere on the other side of the world, that's sponsored by GC or 3M or whatever, they have their latest, greatest products that are there, and you use them, and it's designed to sell you those products. They work, they're awesome. I've got no problems with 3M, with GC, I use their products all the time. But when you go to a sponsored course, you go there and they go, here is our new composite. And you go there and go, this is awesome. I have a good result. The reason is because of that new composite. And it's not because you were holding the mannequin up to your face and you took 45 minutes to do like the prep and then the insertion, and there was zero stress and you were sipping a latte the whole time. It's because of the composite. And so you go home, and as a new grad, or as any like dental owners would know, the worst meeting that you have is when a new grad comes back from the course and they're like, we need to change our entire composite system. And you're like, I've got $45,000 worth of composite in the stockroom, and now you want me to change everything and throw the old ones out completely and just buy you this new one because it's the greatest thing. And so when you go to these courses, you think that the result isn't because you're learning, you externalize it. It's because that educator is good, or the composite I use is good, or the matrix band is good. And if I buy that, I will then become better. But when we do things in your own dental office, you're forced to use what you have. And so you're not using an exotic composite that you're not going to use on your actual patient. You learn how to use your composite. You learn how to use your matrix bands, because it doesn't matter if the other matrix band is better. You don't have it. So how are you going to fix your problem on Monday morning when you're like, you get disheartened because you're like, it worked at the course, it's not working now. And you're like, I either didn't learn anything at the course, which you probably did, or you go, I'm bad, so I'm the problem, and then you internalize it and never get better at anything because you think you're the problem. Or you just go, you try to do the same thing, the same technique that you learnt with instruments and materials that weren't designed for that technique. Like you try to do, you go to a BioClear course and you learn how to do BioClear injection molding, but then you try to do BioClear injection molding techniques with a metal band. Metal blocks light. The whole reason why BioClear works with injection molding is, one, you prep differently so that you don't have as much internal stress and C factor, so it becomes just basically an interproximal class 5 lesion, basically. So it's super easy and low stress. But because it's a clear band, you can actually set 2 to 4 millimeters from all directions rather than just from the top, because the metal band blocks it. And so if you try to do the same technique with materials that aren't appropriate for it, you're going to get a bad result. And then you think the problem is the technique. It wasn't. It's just you applied the technique in the wrong setting or with the wrong materials and all those kind of things. So at least you're learning those things, and it's good that you're stressed and frustrated when you're in the simulation, because that's what it's designed to do. Like I guarantee, the first hands-on that we have is the crown prep boot camp, and you do 14 or 17 crown preps. How easy and less stressful was the next crown prep that you did on an actual patient compared to the fact that you did 14 crown preps on a Saturday?
Mm-hmm. It's just it becomes that muscle memory. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's like you ride the bike and then you suddenly can ride on 2 wheels rather than using the training wheels, and then you don't go back to the training wheels anymore. You're like, you can't unlearn the thing that you learnt. It's that muscle memory. You get slightly stronger, and then you reflect back and like, wow, I'm actually stronger. Like I don't have that same crutch anymore. I don't have to lean on it. I can sort of move to that next door. I can open the next one and then open the next thing. And then okay, my preps are good now. They're not leaning. I don't have undercuts, but my temporaries suck. Okay, let's fix the temporary side of thing. And then you move to the next thing and the next thing. And then you eventually get to the point where okay, all my stuff is predictable. Let's add multiple preps. Now let's add aesthetics. Now let's add occlusion. Then let's add things. And that's how the course is designed, to help you open those doors one at a time so that you can get to the end and be like, I can do a full mouth rehab, but I didn't know anything about how to crown prep 2 years ago. And now suddenly I'm asking questions of does canine guidance, matter on patients with class 2 and this kind of scheme when they're missing upper central? And you're like, I didn't even know the words for that sentence 2 years ago, and now I'm making that sentence. The questions that you ask are more complex, and you change and you grow and you develop.
Dentistry is stressful enough as it is. Nothing is more daunting than the prospect of a patient complaint at any point in your career, but especially as a new grad. However, thanks to Dental Protection Limited, I know I can sleep a little easier. If you've signed up as a student, you'll be automatically covered for your first 18 months of practice for free. Now, for those in the same boat as me, it is now time for us to renew our indemnity insurance before June 30. Now, I've been working alongside DPL for years now, since my student days, and they have always been such huge supporters of everything I do, including the Graduate Dentist podcast. And so I know when push comes to shove and the time calls for it, I can trust DPL to have my back and to be in my corner. With a team of experienced dental-legal consultants and an abundance of resources, including webinars, their own podcast, blog posts, and magazines, you know DPL's got you covered. Thank you, DPL, for always looking after me and for supporting the Graduate Dentist podcast. I kind of wanted to shift the conversation to when we see patients, right? And you mentioned earlier on that one of the biggest things as a grad is actually dentistry is one part of it. But then there's actual patient side of it.
Yes.
And patient care and patient communication and setting patient expectations. And a lot of times I find that many of the questions that we get asked on like our Discord or on our Instagram is, oh, how do I have this conversation with this patient? And how do I talk to them? And how do I treatment plan this? And where do I even begin? And how do I talk to them about money?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I know it's a really big topic and conversation. I guess, do you have advice for dentists and young grads when it comes to you have a patient that comes in, right? And how you should go about building your treatment plan for them and prioritizing what needs to be done, and then how to deliver that in a way to the patient that's not overwhelming?
Like you said, it's a big topic and it's easy to bite off more than you can chew when you're talking about it. But if you look back to the fundamentals when you were going through university, you start with, the emergency stuff. Like the patient comes in and like, I'm in pain, bottom left-hand side. And like, cool. There's other problems. I'm going to put my little blinders on. I'm going to focus on this tooth. But I'm not going to solve this problem in a way that compromises the long term. So usually it tends to be the patients that have, let's say, they need a root canal. And you're like, your options are root canal or exo. And they're like, let's just take it out. And you're like, okay, let's take it out. But then you don't see that they have all these other problems and maybe it would have been better to keep it and spend, the money on this tooth because they don't have a lot of other problems, or they have so many other problems that you're like, look, if you lose this one, we're going to have so many other fires to put out that this is the least of our worries. So having a quick scan around and at least seeing the forest for the trees helps, but stay in that little lane and fix the emergency side of things. It gets easier as you do more complex work because you get to understand what you can see the matrix basically. You look in a patient's mouth and you kind of go, okay, this is going to need this, 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 this. When you're a new grad, you can't see anything. Like you look at it and you're like, there's decay everywhere. I don't even know where to start. And you're like, okay, what's hurting? Start from that. Okay. Is there anything that we need to address urgently because it's life-threatening or is causing so much pain in an acute setting? A lot of the times we as dentists get patients coming in and they have chronic pain and they go, I've been having general sensitivity. How long? 4 years. Okay. It sucks that it hurts and it's been hurting for 4 years, but it's not an emergency situation that I have to solve everything today. Abscess, facial swelling, hot pulp, I woke up, my tooth was broken and I'm in immense agony, solve it. Get it done. Don't try to solve the emergency stuff on the same day when they're not actual emergencies. Be like, look, that makes a lot of sense that would hurt. I can either smooth over this rough tooth because of things, I can put a little temporary on there, or I can give you some pain relief or whatever you need to do. And then say, let's book you back in for a comprehensive examination so I can have a thorough look over everything and figure out all of your problems because they're probably all causing that pain. It's not just one tooth, it's 5 different cavities and I can't solve all of them right now. So emergencies for an emergency appointment. If they come in with a chronic emergency, then you say, look, let's do something to help you, but then don't try to fully diagnose them in that short time. Book yourself the amount of time you need to do the big stuff. Then you book them and you go through, you get all the records you need. You get photos, you get x-rays, OPG, cone beam, whatever you have access to in your dental office. If it's something that is overly complex and complicated, like you look at it and you go, I don't know how to solve this, then what you do, and this is scary, but you say to the patient, I don't know how to solve this because there's a lot of stuff going on. What I want to do is I will sit down with all of the records that I have. I will come up with a plan for you. We'll come back and I will deliver that plan to you, and then we can discuss what your options are. And so you give yourself that get out of jail free card. And sometimes you say that to the patient at the beginning. You go, especially if they come in, they have like a list of problems. I like to tell them when they come in with that list, like, that's great. Well, they come in, they say, look, I hate my smile. It's all broken down. I always preempt it by saying, look, we may not solve all of your problems today, and I may not have an answer for how to fix things today. Today, we are just investigating, getting the diagnostics. Then I will sit down and have a look, and you can do that with your mentor. You can do that with people online. You can do that as part of a structured program or with the owner, colleague, whatever you want to do. And then you bring them back for a second consult, and then you can deliver the plan. So I think we get into this mindset of like, there's a filling, there's a decay, I need to do a filling. Cool, decay, filling, decay, filling. But what happens when there's like 15 different bits of decay? How do I prioritize it? Is the fact that they have that much decay because of a medical issue? Do they need to change their oral habits? Do they also have perio issues? And yes, this tooth has decay, but they have perio and it's class 3 mobile. So what's the point of fixing the decay when you're just going to track the tooth? But you get so focused because we go, tooth 1-8, MO decay, needs MO filling. Like you look at one tooth at a time and you're charting like that, and you get to the end and then you go, okay, you need 15 fillings. And the patient goes, okay, how much will that cost? Oh, that will be $4,500. And they're like, that's a lot. And you're like, but you still need 15 fillings. Do you want to do them one at a time? And like, I can't afford that. And then they just leave. And they say the worst thing that they say is, I'll think about that, because they think about going to a different practice or putting their quilt cover over their head when they get home and then ignoring the problem again, because they've ignored it for 4 years. They're like, well, what's another 4 years? I'll just suffer. But if you go to them and say, look, I know it's scary. I know that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Why don't we both take a step back, and then we can actually figure out what is needed. So you give them breathing space to go through the grief of finding out that they have a lot of problems, and also give yourself the grace to actually sit down and, without the stress of having to present in front of you something that is super difficult to do. Like, it took me over a decade to get the experience level to tell someone, hey, you need 15 crowns and it's going to be this, this much money. It took a long time to get that skill, and you don't have that when you graduate. It's hard to talk about money, but if you can take that step back and you can go, let's have some breathing space. I'll give you time to process, because in their head they go, I need 15 fillings. When you come back, they still think I need 15 fillings. The next thing that they need to process is the money. You break down the processing step by steps. If you go, you need 15 fillings, it's going to cost you $4,500. The only thing they think of is $4,500. I can't afford that. Therefore, no bueno, I go away. The things that you need to also have in your diagnostics is the communication things that you need to talk about. Like, what is their end goal? Because sometimes patients come in with all these problems of decay, but then they go, I want to make my teeth look better. I want to have straighter teeth. I want to have whiter teeth. you may not have the skills to do the orthodontics. You may not have the skills to do a full mouth rehab. What you could do is either ask someone that you would be referring them to, or you go, at least I want to make sure that all the work that I'm doing isn't going to potentially compromise the next plan that the patient has. Because like it's happened to me before, where you do a filling on a front tooth, then the patient goes, I want my teeth to be whiter. And you're like, I wish you told me that before, because the filling doesn't match. And now it's an excuse of like, now you need to give me more money so I can replace the filling. Or what most dentists do is they replace it for free. It's not your fault. You just didn't ask the question. So anytime there's any anterior work, I just go, are you happy with the color? Not because I want more money from you, but because it will cost you twice as much to replace the filling later on. And it's easier to have that discussion at the beginning than at the end. So it's all those bits. So basically, don't detriment the long term, and then give yourself the grace to break things. These are the bigger cases. Where the smaller ones, they do get easier to do the more times you do it. And you go, okay, you need 4 fillings. The cost for doing those 4 fillings, and they're in quadrant, 1 on the top right hand side, is, so I'll make up a number, $800. And then you go, would you like to do them at the same time? Or did you want me to break them up due to cost? Because the only reason why we did 1 filling at a time at university is because it took you 3 hours to do a filling. And then you graduate, and then you're like, it doesn't take me 3 hours to do a filling anymore, but we still do 1 filling at a time. And the patient has 15 fillings. They're like, I'm going to have to come back 15 times. I need to get a second job to pay for the lost income from the first job. So if you're like, but you only just need 1 afternoon off on your day off, and then we can just smash them out and we're good. So trying to get into the cycle of batching things together, giving the patient the options of, hey, you have this many teeth to work on. I can break it down into quadrants. Let's do them in sections and in stages, and you can get more repetitions in sort of doing that.
I think the point that you made mention of before that I think was really important was taking a step back. And I think early on in your career, you don't realize all the things that you don't see, and you have tunnel vision. And the example that you gave when you talked about whitening and fillings was, I had a case that I saw early last year where I had a patient came in emergency because she had a whole young patient, in her 20s, hole in one of her front teeth that she needed fixed. We did our examination, had a look. I'm like, you've got a lot of fillings that need to be done. But my tunnel vision was, oh, holes in your teeth, let's do fillings. Filled all of her teeth. She also had severe crowding, and it was on the agenda that she was going to see an orthodontist. But then she went and had her ortho consult after she'd done all the restorative work with me, and the orthodontist had said, oh, I want you to extract 4 of these premolars that you've just filled. And we were like, and both the patient and I were just like, oh, I kind of wish we knew that beforehand, right?
Yeah.
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 But
yeah, I laugh because it's happened to me.
Yeah.
Or you go, or the worst case is you go, you've taken a tooth out and you go, I really wish I'd kept that tooth because it would have made my treatment plan so much easier. You could have kept the lower second molar, and so they're going to have a denture later on, and it's easier for them to adapt to having not a free end saddle. And you're like, if we keep this tooth, we can make a better denture. But you didn't know that because you hadn't asked them about replacing the teeth. And then they've fixed everything, like, oh, look, I can't chew on this side, let's make a denture. And you're like, now it's a free end saddle. And you're like, and they're like, oh, this sucks. And I'm like, it was actually a pretty easy endo to do and a crown, but you don't know what you don't know when you're, a new grad. And it happened to me as well. We're laughing at it, but these are the experiences that we had, and then we're passing on that information. And so having that, we do it all the time. We have, there's 9 dentists at our dental practice, and frequently they'll come in, they'll come into my room or to any of the other more experienced dentists' room, and they'll say, I've got this case. This is what I'm thinking of doing. Can you see any flaws in my plan? Can you see 5 years down the track? Because I haven't been working for 5 years. And so I don't know if this plan will work for 5 years. Or it's like, oh, I've done that before. Here are the things that I had to learn the hard way. Or these are the red flags I can see in your patient that you can't. Like the one you said with, you've done fillings on teeth that ended up needing to be removed. I've done that, but with perio teeth before, where I'm like, oh, let's do a filling, and then it's like, now it needs to be removed. Like, worse is if you do a crown on a tooth and you didn't realize you had perio, or an endo lesion. Like, you have all these things and you don't realize what you don't realize because you're so new to it, and you don't give yourself the grace of saying, I don't know. Like, it actually is more powerful to tell the patient, I don't know. Like, they believe you when you say, I know something, more when you tell them all the things you don't know. Like, you're like, this is my lane. I'm happy to talk to you all about this. I don't know this thing. And so they believe you when you say, I know this thing, because you're honest about the things you don't know. If you basically try to tell them you know everything, or pretend you know everything, or don't admit that you don't know everything, they don't trust you as much. And trust is the thing that builds to these bigger cases. Like, it's very rare that a patient comes to see me off the street and they do a full mouth rehab and they know nothing about me or the practice or anything. They're either word of mouth from other patients, referred internally or externally from other providers, so someone else has increased the trust on me, or I've been seeing you for 10 years. And suddenly they're like, yeah, remember when you told me 10 years ago that I might need a full mouth rehab, or I might need veneers, or I might need ortho? I'm now ready for it. I want you to do it. And so if you don't have that trust built up, that's why you have the goodwill that, you talk about when you're buying and selling practices. You buy and sell the goodwill. That's what the goodwill is. That trust that's built over the long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And going back to your comment about how powerful it is to admit that you don't know, that you need some time to sit down with their records, I found that, like, even now, I still do. I did it just yesterday, where it says, I recognize there are limitations to how much I know, but what I want to do is go talk to the people that do know, right?
Yeah.
And essentially come up with a team for you, so find out who are the best people to help look after your case, what things I can do for you, and what things are better managed by other people. So it's like, if it's all right with you, like, I'd like to take your case and go talk to the people and get other people's opinions. And I've found that every time I've said that, patients, I guess it's like what you were saying about building that goodwill and that trust and that honesty, where they appreciate that, oh, you're going to go get other people's opinions? It's like, that's awesome. And I don't even need to go pay for another consult to get other people's opinions on that case as well, right? So
they feel special.
They feel special that you're taking the time to go further investigate into their case.
Yeah, and like you said, they don't have to do the running around, which people hate. They don't have to pay for a second opinion that people hate, because they're like, I already came for one opinion. You're like, you still have to give me the money, but I can give you no answers. So go. Like, it's different when you're like, this is too complex, go see a specialist. Completely different, because they understand that. But it's like, I don't know, go pay someone else to also tell you that maybe they don't know as well. Like, I can do the running around and sort of doing that. Patients, at least in Australia, have that mindset like a GP, like a medical doctor, where they go in, they speak to them for 10 minutes, they focus on this one little thing, and then the rest of their body just gets completely ignored and missed. And so they come in with the same mindset in dentistry. It's like, I have whole, fix whole. And you suddenly talk to them, it's like, hey, I care about you as an individual, as a person, the whole holistic dentistry, which is a little annoying when dentists harp on about that, because we all try to be holistic, take the whole patient, the whole mouth, and not have that tunnel vision. And it's really refreshing for patients when you don't treat them like they get treated at the GP, where they're waiting for hours and they come in and you spend 4 minutes with them and then you solve half a problem and then they have to come back again. Like, you take the time and they're really thankful, like you said.
You all know that if there's one thing I am super passionate about and always advocate for on our podcast, it is our mental well-being as dentists. There's no denying that our profession can demand so much from us, and it can drain us physically, emotionally, socially, and mentally. And some days it can all just feel a little too much. This is where our friends at Dental Practitioner Support come in. Whether you're new to dentistry or have been practicing for years, Dental Practitioner Support is here to offer guidance, reassurance, and a safe space to talk about whatever it may be that's weighing heavy on your heart. They provide 24-hour services that are completely confidential and independent, so you know that you will always have someone to turn to. Whatever your scenario may be, Dental Practitioner Support is just one call away. And so, in case you ever need it, save the number 1-800-377-700 or visit their website at dpsupport.org.au. Remember, as we say time and time again on the podcast, you are never alone, and we really are all in it together.
I think another area that we often struggle with new grads is, let's take the typical case of the patient's got a tooth with deep decay, and I think we often get overwhelmed when presenting to the patient of, do we try saving the tooth, or is it restorable? I don't know if it's restorable until I dismantle it. But then, if it's not restorable, do we take it out? But then if you take it out, then you've got a space. And then do we do an implant, or do we do a bridge, or do we do a denture? And you're thinking of all these different things, and you lay all of that out to your patient, and they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I've just got a hole in my tooth.
Right? Yeah.
How do we break that down, and what advice would you give to grads to kind of just take a step back and have a systematic approach to communicating this and making your decision as to what to do for the patient?
So I'll walk you through what I do and the reason why I do it. So human beings can only really process two choices. So if you have more choices, it makes it harder to make a choice. Like if you go to a restaurant and you have like 3 different entrees to pick from, it's real easy to pick an entree because you're like, I don't feel like chicken, I'm going to go for the eggplant. I don't really like fish, don't want chicken today, I'm going to go for the eggplant. Super easy. When there's 45 different things on the menu, you're like, I have no idea. Like, I can sit there for an hour trying to figure out what entree, and then they're like, okay, what do you want for main? So like, just give me another hour. Like, it's so difficult. And in dentistry, we make so many decisions, like micro decisions in dentistry. Like, am I going to move the matrix band this way, this way? Am I going to use increments? Or am I going to use flowable? Am I going to do this? There's so many micro decisions that we make subconsciously. It fatigues us. And so to have to make these decisions for the patients, it's really difficult. So if you can't make the decision for the patient, it's either because you haven't asked enough questions so you get to know the patient, their wants, their needs, their goals, or because it's not your decision to make, it's the patient's. And so you need to not take ownership of their tooth, it's their tooth. I'm just there to do the work that is required. If it's to fix, I will fix. If it's extract, I will extract. If we are replacing, I will replace. I am the person doing the work, not the person deciding on the work. So we as dentists need to be like, these are your options. This is the best treatment that I recommend based on this, that I understand about you. What can you afford? This is the compromise that we can do. So that, with your question of, is the tooth fixable? I usually like to get a piece of, just a piece of A4 or A5 piece of paper and just sit down with the patient. Usually these days I do it verbally, but it really helps to write it down. You know how when you were asking me the question, you had that sort of like frazzled mind map of like, if I do this, 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 you do that, but slower and on purpose with the patient in front of you. So as you get better at doing it, as you've done it enough times, you can do it verbally because you have that mind map mapped out. But you go, okay, this tooth might be fixable. In order to find out if it's fixable, I need to take it apart. It definitely needs a root canal or to be removed. If it's fixable, it definitely needs a root canal. So you go 2 options, remove, fix. And you go, do you want to look at fixing the tooth if it's fixable? And they go, no, I don't care if it's fixable. I want this removed. Don't even bother going down the pathway of like, these are the risks of root canals, these are the risks of crowns, this is the cost of a crown. They don't even want to do it. Okay, let's talk about extraction. When we extract the tooth, these are your options, as in like we can extract it and replace it versus like all those kind of things. So
Can I pause for a second?
Yes.
And just add a question onto that, or a condition onto that? What happens if this tooth was one that you felt was restorable, and the patient's just like hasn't really heard about, just says, "Nope, just take it out"? Would you still, if you feel like the tooth was still restorable, and patient was young, would you stress it a bit more?
yes and no. So if something is like, I can fix the tooth, but you're more than allowed to remove it. Let's say a tooth that has really deep decay, and it needs a root canal. It's going to be, a big composite filling that you have to do in order to stabilize it, so you can do the root canal and then a crown, deep marginal elevation, all those crazy things that we like to do. It's not your tooth. So when the patient goes to, he's like, what would you do? It's like, I wouldn't have let my tooth get to that point in the first place. The patient then goes, that's fine that you can fix it. I still want it removed. That's well within their right to remove the tooth. You can say, look, if you remove it, the other teeth will move. It's more difficult to do a root canal. These are the risks and the benefits. But it's appropriate to remove the tooth. We're talking about a tooth that needs root canal versus exo. Very clear cut. So they're allowed to do it. Yes, I wouldn't make that choice for myself, but it's within the acceptable choices that I would offer to the patient because I've offered them to them. So don't have your own internal bias navigate that, because we think we're altruistic, but we also don't know what's going on with their life. And so we get some patients that go, just take it out, and then they come back and say, I regret that. That's fine. It's your decision to regret. It's not me enforcing something on you, because you can also do it. We think it only happens one way. It happens the other way. And we go, you should keep this tooth. And they're like, okay, but they shouldn't have kept the tooth because you want to save everything. And suddenly they're worse off financially and they're in pain. And now you don't have the same thought process of like, oh, but I was just being the nice person. Like, it's your tooth. You should have chosen the exo if you really wanted it. Like, we have that disconnect. The other time that it happens is when the patient chooses, and a lot of patients say this, like they need a very small filling and they go, just take the tooth out. And you're like, I didn't give you that choice because it wasn't a choice to give you.
Yeah.
And I tell them, no, that's not appropriate. These are the only options you have for this tooth. It's do a filling or obviously suffer with the hole that you still have. If they then go, no, the only option I want is to remove the tooth, they need a fissure seal, and they're like, just take it out. You're like, that's fine. You are allowed to do that. It's your mouth. You're allowed to do that. I won't be part of it. And so we get patients, and it happens a lot with like ortho extractions, or like they've got crowding on their anteriors and their canine is like in the wrong place, or their central is in the wrong place. And like, take out my central. And you're like, look, if you just have ortho, this will all go away. I know you can't afford it, but do not take your central out. You will regret it later. And I've had those conversations with patients. And then they go, no, I want it out. And you go, if you talk to enough dentists, I am sure you'll find one that will do exactly what you want. It is the wrong thing in my opinion, and I won't be a part of it. And then you don't treat them. Because once you treat them, you can't, as a patient, consent to treatment that is below the standard of care. And so if something happens, like let's say you take out their central, it was fine, you took it out, and then they go see an orthodontist because they now want ortho 5 years later, and the orthodontist goes, what happened to your central? It's like, oh, Erica told me to take it out. And you're like, that's weird, she shouldn't have done that. Then the patient goes and talks to APRA. APRA goes, why did you take out her central? It wasn't appropriate. You actually get in trouble because you did what the patient said, which wasn't part of the standard of care. It's different if it needed a root canal or had a massive abscess and they said, just take it out and I'll live with a gap. It's like, cool. Any dentist feels very uncomfortable taking out a central. unless it's like, even class 3 mobile centrals, we get uncomfortable taking it out. Because like, what are we going to do about this? Because we know how difficult it is to replace.
Yeah.
I live in a port, you know, most of my patients are, you know, Port Adelaide supporters, and they joke, oh, if I lose a tooth, I'll just look more like a Port Adelaide supporter with lots of missing teeth. Like, they joke about, like, it's not a joke to me, but for them it is. So it's like, okay, we'll take it out, and these are your options to replace it. So getting back to what we'll talk about, you give them those choices, and you give them the consequences of going down that pathway and the costs. And they might go, oh, because in their head, you don't know what they're thinking. So sometimes patients go, I will take it out, then I will put an implant. They don't know that an implant costs $6,500, $7,000. And then you tell them an implant's going to cost $6,000 to $7,000. Wow, I didn't realize it was that expensive. What did you think it was going to cost? Oh, about $1,000, $2,000. Actually, that's the price of a denture. I don't want dentures. If you don't want an implant, you can't afford an implant, and you don't want a denture, then the only option is a bridge. A bridge isn't suitable because of these reasons, so you're left with a gap. Oh, I don't want a gap. Then the only option is to go back and go to the fixing. And so you navigate the pathway that way. We give them too many choices, and then we can't hold their hand as that we're the guide because we have the knowledge. We don't info dump and then they have to figure it out. We guide them step by step by giving them two choices. Do you want this or this? This or this? And you go, okay, this might be restorable. Okay, restorable. It needs a root canal and a filling. This is the options that we're going to have here. Or you got those ones that you don't know if it needs root canal. It's like vital, but it looks really deep. And you're like, I will take this apart. If we get into the nerve, we're going to do a root canal. This is the cost if I do a filling and a root canal. If it doesn't need a root canal, we will just do the filling. This is what it costs. If, however, in a couple of days, weeks, months, years, it ends up needing a root canal, this is what the cost would be. Once the tooth is stable, either with or without a root canal, you need a crown. A lot of dentists go, you need a root canal, and then forget about the crown bit. And then when do they tell the patient they need a crown? After the root canal is finished. And what does that sound like? It sounds like an upsell, because they're like, everything feels fine. The root canal requires the full coronal cover, or the full occlusal coverage. And so if you don't tell them at the start, they think you're trying to upsell them, and they don't do it. And then what happens when the tooth breaks 5-10 years later? Root canals don't work because my tooth broke. Root canal worked, the tooth broke because you didn't get the crown. So tell them about the crown at the beginning. The reason why we don't is because we are scared that it's going to be too much money for the patient. It's the same cost if you tell them at the start or at the end. They're just more likely to do it at the start. And if you open it up and you say, look, it might not be fixable, what happens when it's not fixable? This is what I will do if it's not fixable. I will extirpate the tooth so you don't have pain. I will put a temporary, and then we will explore that other pathway. And so they know, if this happens, this is what I do, these are the costs, these are the risks associated with this. And it's not just, it's the exact same thing that you were talking about before, that sort of info dump, but in a structured way. And if you have it written down on a piece of paper, you can give it to the patient and they can follow along. And then what you do is you've told them the cost of the different pathways. It's in your notes. The treatment plan that you give them is for that first step, because you know that first step. It's not, here is $7,000 just in case we need an implant. It's, this is the cost for doing a filling and an extirpation, because I know that that's what I'm going to need to do. Once I've done that, this is the next stage, but you've recorded those costs, but the actual what cost is the next one, that's what they care about. Once you have a definitive plan, then you can give them that sort of big thing of like, okay, this is the cost of the root canal and a crown and all the item codes they can take to their health fund and all that. But if you just give them 5 plans of root canal and a crown versus implant, one, you're spending 45 minutes trying to figure out what item numbers you're supposed to be using. But also, they look at the total price for some reason, and they go, root canal and implant, that's going to be $10,000. I don't want to do that. It's like, you don't do both. You do one or the other. But the first step is take it apart and see if it's fixable. And then you move on to the next thing. So one decision at a time. Don't do 50 decisions yourself, but also don't let the patient try to choose from 50 different options, because it doesn't work when you go to a restaurant, and it doesn't work when you try to do dentistry.
Like when you're on Netflix and you're trying, what movie do you want to watch tonight?
And so you watch nothing.
Yeah.
You scroll on your phone.
I think the bit that I really took away from your decision tree is not getting too far ahead of ourselves. And the part that stuck with me was like, when we were talking about, is this tooth restorable or not? Before we even get to the point of talking about options related to removing the tooth and replacing it, is like, let's not even get to that point yet. Let's just figure out if it's restorable or not. Because if it's restorable, we don't even need to have that discussion. But then if it's unrestorable, then we have no option of talking about restoring it because it's unrestorable. So we completely close that chapter, and we're now left with this second half of this decision-making tree. And so I think it really helps distill it and just allows us to follow more of a structured pathway of getting to an endpoint with the patient. But also, like that you said, it's not always just you go down the decision tree. You actually go down, it's like snakes and ladders, right? Like you can go down, but then you might come back up because they've explored that pathway and realized, oh no, I actually don't like that. Can we come back up? But you've guided them along that. You've guided them along that pathway rather than just dumping it all in one go.
Correct. And it's the same thing when, like, if you answer the phone at the practice and a patient goes, what can you do for me? And then you start literally going, well, if you've got crowding, this is the treatment options and the cost. If you have one missing tooth, these are your options. And if you have multiple missing teeth, these are your options. And if you have one filling, I can do this. And like you start to have it doesn't make sense. Like no one would do that. And yet we do it when the patient comes in and goes, what can you do to fix this tooth? And you go, bleh. You just info dump. And you just go, okay, let's just see what the problem is first and then figure out how to sort of solve it. Get the diagnostics and then manage.
Yeah, I think so. I think when we're early on in our career, you get overwhelmed and it's very easy to just be to essentially not know how to make a decision, and then you confuse your patient and then no one makes a decision. Michael, let's wrap up our podcast with some like final thoughts. And we've done a lot of reflecting on our journeys in dentistry, your early years, how you've learned, how you've upskilled, and how you've now become an educator. Do you have any final words of advice for our graduate dentist community? And often the way I phrase this question is, in all the discussions that you have with people day in, day out, sometimes something just sticks. And it may be a story that you had with one of your students or one of your mentees or whoever it may be. And you're like, oh, this was a really powerful conversation or a powerful story. And you think that might be beneficial to share with our audience.
I think it really comes back to what I was talking about with, people wanting to learn photography and not taking the camera out of the box. Like you can't see step 2 when you haven't even started step 0. Like you need to like start the process, take the first step on that journey, and then believe that you'll get that you'll follow the pathway, that it's a structured pathway in life, and like step 1 leads to step 2, leads to step 3, step 4, step 5. We sit there and we worry whether it's treatment planning, whether it's what course to do in 5 years' time, or what is my life going to look like when I have kids, but you don't even have a partner yet. And like you have all of these things that you think of that are 5-10 years down the track, or 5-10 steps down the track, but you haven't even started step 0. You're not even on the ladder. Like get on the ladder, then take the next step. I mean, I've got a quote that is on, like, I've got my little vision board over there. It's probably can't see it in the thing, but like I'll read it out. Like it goes, be ready and willing to be a beginner every morning. That's how you grow and step into greatness. So you have to go, I don't know everything. I'm just going to take a step in the right direction. I'm going to have people hold my hand as I'm stepping forward, and then trust and believe that step 2 comes after step 1 once I've gotten on the ladder at step 0. Like, you've got to start that journey, whether it's opening the box of your camera, whether it's asking the patient, what do you want to do? Do you want to fix or remove the tooth? Like, all of these decisions start with a simple question or a simple something, but we agonize over step 5, but we haven't even started step 0.
I love that. And I love how that's become like the theme of this overall podcast. It's tied into from our very first discussion about, getting worried about doing something new for the first time, and then you encounter another problem and another problem, and all those closed doors. But it's just, nope, just one door at a time. Close this door, just persist through with it. We talked about it in terms of, our career and deciding what course to do, and just, you've got a plan, stick with it. Don't jump 5 steps ahead and start thinking about doing all those other things when you haven't mastered the very basics yet. And then talking about it in terms of our patient management and communicating with them, it's all just one step at the time, not getting too far ahead of ourselves, but also trusting that process and that it will come, that the next step comes after the first step. I really like that. I think that was a really nice way to round up the podcast and tie it all up together. Thank you, Michael. I think that was really valuable, and I really enjoyed the conversation. So thank you for spending your time with us today.
Thank you for having me, Eric.
And thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the Graduate Dentist Podcast. I really hope you've taken something valuable away from this episode, and that you feel heard, you feel seen, inspired, and optimistic about our journey as graduate dentists. As I always say, we're in it together, so let's spread the word, let's share the love, send this to your friends, your colleagues, and those who are on a similar path who you feel may benefit from being part of the community. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so send me a message, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks' time for another episode.